Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Simmons. I am founder, chief creator of Lamb and Honey. We are a plant-based body care brand based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And we welcome you to the SoulCare sessions. This platform was created as a safe space for us to come together so others can learn how to advocate for themselves, slow down and recharge, and to form a connection with God during every season of your life, especially those times that cause us to melt down the wall, as I like to say it, right? So today, our guest is Takia Lamb of TK Consulting and Design. And she is owner of a creative design agency based also in Atlanta, Georgia. Kia, can you take a moment to introduce yourselves to the people and tell us what self-care means to you and why it's important?
I'm sorry, it froze. So what was that?
Ooh. Okay. Did you not hear the question? What happened?
It froze.
Oh,
It froze on my
okay.
end. Yeah. So yeah, if you could repeat the question. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the question is, I asked you to introduce yourself to the people, to tell us who you are, and to tell us also what self-care means to you and why it's important.
Um, my name is Takia Lamb. I am founder of TK Consulting and Design, sitting in my car. About to head to a shoot in just a little bit. And I think the second part of the question was, what does self-care look like for me?
Mhm. So what does it mean to
um,
you and what does it look like?
So I think it's an interesting question because I think as an entrepreneur, I think we're often scrambling for what is self-care? What does it look like? How do you, catch this mythical being that's like floating off, just out of reach? I think what it means for me is rest and peace and being able to refill my cup. And I don't always know how to get there. So yes, that is the truth of self-care from my perspective.
That's a real statement because even though we know, we can lean on God, that we can cast our cares upon Him, that He gives us all these things, right? But at the same time, it's sometimes a struggle to even want to like go to Him. That's a real statement. It's sometimes hard, even though you know that you should. So how do you dig yourself back up to make sure that's your first resource versus okay, I need a shot. Like how do you do that?
Ugh, I don't. So I think God makes us do that. I think, at least in my life, I feel like God has a way of bringing me back to Him. And I think that He does it in different ways. Like, I feel like He does it in the still, calm voice way, and then He does it in the loud, booming thunder way.
Mhm,
But I
mhm.
think that, for me, I think entrepreneurship is such a personal development journey in addition to such a spiritual journey that it's hard not to see God in it. You'll be trying to figure out how you're going to pay this bill that you really need to pay, or you're going to be in a situation. And then an invoice comes in or a check comes in, and you're like, oh, thank God. Like there's so many thank God moments. So I think spirituality, reaching out to God, is like there's like a state of desperation, I guess, that entrepreneurship draws out of you. And I think God is usually in the midst of those moments,
For sure.
interweaved in between all of those hard times, and the good times too. Like when you get that check and things are going well, oh, it was God. Like there's no way that it was not, that God was not involved in this.
For sure. So then that kind of takes me to like segue into the fact it's like, so then even when you're getting refilled or repurposed, recharged, resting, and then even in those spaces, you have to find yourself staying in a space of expectation, right?
Hmm.
So, like, even though I'm thankful that the check came, I'm thankful that my husband gave me an opportunity to get away and woosah from my kids, right? Or
Hmm.
because to get that, so I'm thankful that the check came. But the reality, because I know sometimes us as business women, we be like, the check ain't coming.
Mhm.
Right? We
Mhm.
find ourselves saying, or it becomes a, I hope it's coming versus I know it's coming.
Mhm.
Right? So even in those moments, we still have to find ourselves staying on the glasses half full versus being half empty, because otherwise you'll stay, I think you wind up staying in the valley longer,
Mhm.
right? You want to
Yeah.
stay in the valley longer. So with that staying with that being the case, then how to deal with, because I know sometimes when we find ourselves in the valley, we find ourselves feeling like we failed,
Mhm.
right? So tell me about when we feel like, tell me about how you get to the place where you feel like failure is okay.
So I believe that I'm on a personal mission to address failure differently than what I've grown up to know it to be, which is bad. Like, I think most of us would say like failure is bad, but that's not true. Or at least I don't think that it's true anymore in the same ways that I used to think it's true. Um, I think the Bible, going back to that spiritual aspect, the Bible talks a lot about brokenness, and there's a lot of songs about brokenness and how imperfect we are, and like, but I think there's still this weird human thing that we do where we're like, okay, we're not perfect, but we're like pretty dang close. It's like, no, you're actually this broken being, and honestly, part of your deliverance is in the brokenness, like, in understanding your brokenness, right? So I think what I've been trying to do every day is just embrace the failure, embrace the hard conversations, embrace the fact that in order to get to this place where I feel like, man, we've done some amazing things, I've had to fail so many times. And so if I can go back and I could think, oh, would you have not failed? Would you have avoided failure to get to this place where you feel like, oh man, I did some really cool things? No, I would not. Like, I would embrace the failure, and I would accept failure as a part of the journey, and a necessary part of the journey to get from point A to point B. So I mean, I think that is the general message, is like failure is not what we thought it was. And I'm learning that and reimagining that every day.
Excuse me.
I was trying to talk so I can make sure like your cough was out, but
Yeah, I was over here choking, but we bless the Lord. But yeah, that failure is a real aspect. So you also said that you were on your journey to reprogram those thoughts of what failure is, right?
Mhm.
And it's important for us to do that because at times we feel like if we failed, we're unsuccessful. Or,
Mhm.
or if we fail, then maybe this wasn't our calling to do in the first place. Maybe we were supposed to be doing something else.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
how do you take those failure moments? One, how do you deal with them? And then
Mhm.
two, what are the steps you're taking to make sure people understand, or your sons, your employees, that they understand, or maybe just your circle of influence in general,
Mhm.
about how they're able to fail forward.
Can you rephrase really quick? Because I think I have a good answer, but I want to make sure that I'm answering the right question. Can you rephrase the question?
Walk me through it. Tell me how you would help your circle of influence
Mhm.
realize that failure is okay to do,
Mhm.
and how they should be able to cope with it versus saying, I'm a failure, being as though this is
Mhm.
just my stepping stone to my greatness.
So I think it's kind of like what I'm hearing is like it's a how to, like how to fail. Like how would I teach people how to fail better? And I think that that is an awesome question. I think that my I think the best ways to teach are through sharing and authenticity, and sharing how I messed up and how it went and what I learned. I think that's one of the things that I would say is that I try to be more transparent about failure. I try to talk about failure more, and I try to be as open and honest about the mistakes as I am about the wins, because I hate when people are like, "Oh, I see you, you out here doing," and it's not like, "Oh, I hate when people are like excited for me." It's more so like we look at success and we don't see failure. And that bothers me because I'm like, "Oh, but I failed too." And
Right.
so to me that matters just as much. Um in a good way. And then I think just like thinking about just the natural um cycles in the world and just in life where failure is actually like a good thing. So kids have to fall to learn how to walk. Like it's a part of the process. They fall, they know, ooh, falling hurts, or falling isn't gonna get me to be vertical mostly. And so I'm going to try like to continue to try until I learn how to walk. Kids fall so much. Potty training, lots of accidents. Like it is a rhythm of, man, I realize when I feel this way, I know, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. But the way I learned that is when I feel it, I go to the bathroom, and then mommy and daddy are like frustrated because I was supposed to go to the potty and I don't understand why they're frustrated. So there's just like all of these things I think from kids, from life, that we realize like the first time you experience a, like a situation that's hurts or it's harmful, sometimes it's almost like, be thankful that it was this thing and not this thing, or like, and I'm not saying that there's not these horrendous things in the world that we want to avoid. The world is not fair by any means, so I don't want to convey that everything is fair and life is fair. But I think just in our day to day, if you can see the pattern of how failure helps us, I think we can shift how we perceive failure over time.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. So, how to perceive failure over time. Expound on that just like a little bit.
So I think about, for women, let's take it to
Mhm.
something I think most of us could relate to. You know that guy that you just thought was oh so fine, and he was just oh so amazing, and um you wanted to be with him. Like you imagine your whole life, y'all had like 6 kids in a house somewhere, and the mountains or whatever. Um but it doesn't work out. And I think most of us see those patterns where it's like, oh man, you look back at that guy and you're like, oh, he was gonna look like that. Or I don't know if I really wanted to be with him like that. So I think just exploring the times that you just knew that you wanted something, or that something just didn't like pan out, and it wasn't bad. Like maybe the feeling at the time was bad, but then later down the line it was like, ooh, this actually wasn't so bad. I think that's kind of what I mean. Those are the situations that I look at, especially in business. I'm like, because I think in life you can you're going to fail, but you can go through life in a way that feels like a little bit safer, I will say. Like, you get the job, you get the thing, you get all the things you want, and you kind of just, you can get to a place where it's just like, okay, I did all the things. Like, I'm kind of like in this place where there's a rhythm to it. I think in entrepreneurship, you don't get that. you don't there's a way to build up to that point, but for the most part the journey can be very rocky and very uncertain. And so I think in entrepreneurship specifically, you just have lesson after lesson that you can like pull from for the rest of your life. You'll be like so good at failing. And hopefully at the end of your good at failing, you'll be successful. So
Agreed. I think that failing makes you more transformational for people.
mhm,
It makes you real, right? So
mhm,
in those moments that you do fail, how do you find yourself? I also feel like failure is a part of your fruitfulness, right? It's a part of your productivity, because
mhm,
if you don't make those mistakes, then how do you know what not to do later? And once
mhm.
you learn from those mistakes, and then I guess the next question would be, how do you find yourself producing from your failure? Ooh, that was good. Mhm.
I think I think the in terms of, I think what I'm hearing or what I understand it to be is like, how do you move past failure? Like, how do you move on after you failed? And I honestly think that that is why I started to look at failure differently, because I realized failure is debilitating. Failure stops you in your tracks, and failure puts you in a space where it's very difficult to move forward. So, not being able to master failure is, to me, way worse than actually experiencing the things that you think will happen if you fail. Um, so, I think moving past failure, I've had to ask myself, like, man, you are so depressed or you're so upset because this thing didn't work out the way that you thought it was supposed to work out. And, you wish this, whatever. But what are you going to do today? Like, what are you going to do today? You've failed, you've stopped, you've laid in your bed, you've cried, you slid down the wall, but your bills still have to get paid. You still have to eat. Like, practically, life does have to go on. And no matter what you do, you take a step, you could trip. You start a job, you could get fired. You start a relationship, it can end. Like, not being able to cope with the realities of the fact that everything doesn't end picture perfect is just not a realistic way to deal with life. And so I think part of accepting that helps us to say, okay, you know what? If no matter what, I'm going to face failure, maybe I can try something that I really want instead of avoiding the things I really want because I'm afraid that I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't get it. It's like, it's kind of it's a weird paradox to avoid like the joy of your life or trying to get to a joyful place because you're afraid of what would happen if you lose it before you get it. You know?
Yeah, that's the sucky part. But I think it's important for us to remember, I guess that becomes that God factor, right? That's because you have to always remember that you have joy, regardless of what's spinning around you. You know, I think those are those moments when I it takes me back to, when Jesus was in the bottom of the boat and the storm was going on around him, and the disciples on the boat was like, yo, you don't feel this storm, dude? And Jesus is like, I'm asleep, cat. Like, what are you doing? Go to sleep.
I'm tired.
Right. He's like, I'm going to sleep. The storm isn't bothering me, right? So
Rest is
I
more
think,
important.
right. I think the lesson in that is, what he was basically saying was, I got this. If I'm asleep, if this isn't bothering me, then do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? He's like, do what I do. And then he said it. He said, cast your cares on me. I'm not gonna stress about all of these things because I'm God, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I created the storm in the first place. What are you doing? What are
He said
you
it's
doing?
just a little wilder. Um,
I love it. But yes, that's exactly right. And then I think my last question for you today is I think because, us as women, wives, moms, business owners, we're busy and we have great responsibility. And I know sometimes we tend to feel bad when we need a moment to ourselves because we're the glue that holds our house together. You know, um, I hope my husband doesn't fight me for this, but I do know that, like, if I go out of town, my husband is going to eat trash the entire time I'm gone. Not literally trash, but he's going to go to Five Guys. He's going to go to Chick-fil-A and Burger King, and even though Chick-fil-A is a healthier choice, but you get my point. Like, he's going to eat out. He's going to eat fast food, and he's just going to eat bad because I'm not here. So, one, I've learned to say, okay, well, if I'm going to go out of town, let me at least attempt to prep something
mm-hmm.
for him because I need him to eat well, even in my absence, because it's my responsibility, right? Some people, I'm probably going to get some grief about that, but that's my husband. I want to take care of him. I want to make sure he's good. Um, so in that, like, do you think that it's a challenge for you to tear away because you have so much responsibility? or are you able to still, or do you feel bad about when you go on your girls trip or you take your moments of solitude? Do you feel bad when you leave your husband and your kids in your house, or are you just like, child, I'm out, I can't, like, I need this moment and I'm gonna take it and I don't feel bad about it?
That's funny. I used to feel bad. I used to feel like, uh, and I was talking to somebody about this not too long ago. A mom of three, um, and she was being challenged by her responsibility, the weight of that responsibility. And I was like, I get it. Like, I get it. You get married, you have kids, you have this like, impossible um, job to raise people that are good and to support somebody, which I mean, husband, wife, both, we should be supporting each other.
Right.
But if you go down, the whole shit burns. In short, is what I told her. I was like, if I don't take care of myself, like I used to think, like, oh, take care of everybody else and everything will be good. But I think I've learned the flip of that. If I don't take care of myself and I'm the person that needs to be okay to take care of everybody else, then the whole shit burns. So if I switch the priority to making sure that I'm good, and I mean, obviously balance between social to selfish or whatever. But if you know you're not a selfish person, then clearly this is not the issue for you. The issue is not putting yourself in a situation where your kids can't see you healthy because despite, or your husband or whatever, because despite what you might think about your sacrifice, what you're telling them is that you're not that important to care for, and that is a terrible lesson to teach anybody that loves you. um and I think in some regards our kids understand, like, oh, mommy takes care of me and that's special. But I also think that there is a level of, I would not want my kids to sacrifice their entire selves until they had nothing. I've been, oh, so tired and so depleted and so just gone, you know what I mean? Like, I've been at my lowest and the least that I could possibly be, and that is not a good place to be. I would not wish that on anybody. um so I think generally my answer is that no, I do not feel bad anymore. I feel like everybody deserves to be cared for, and I think that includes myself. And I hope that women also adopt the same thing. Everybody who you feel like deserves to be cared for, have a good meal, not have to worry about something, you deserve the same energy. Like, and if you're the only person who can give it to you, give it to yourself and tell people exactly what I said. I deserve the same energy. So
Facts.
I don't feel bad anymore.
Look, and I can back that up with a whole Bible scripture. Love your neighbor as yourself. Because guess what? It implies that I love me, right? And
Girl,
I'm not going to feel bad because I love me. Because if I don't love me, how can you expect me to love you?
I saw somebody post the other day and they were giving this big like rundown of like love in that scripture, and they were like, love your this, love your that, love your this. And it was like, at no point is it like basically comparing it to the world of like selfish, like you have to take self out of it. And I was like, see, I think that's the danger in the scripture. I think you can care about yourself and care, like, how do you know how to care for people if you don't have any love for yourself? Like, and I think the Bible told us that a long time ago, but people just took out like that last part, and they were just like, okay, love other people, give out until you
Right,
like till you die out, you know. And I'm like, but he literally said that
right,
you actually have to understand how to love yourself in order to love other people, but you're missing it. Like,
right.
you are
Because
missing it. So
the
yeah,
reality is
self-love is part of it.
you can't pour from an empty cup, and he's literally giving the commandment to say, please love your neighbor like you love yourself, not love
Mhm.
your neighbor, period. There was no period. There was a whole second part to that sentence that said, please
Yeah.
make sure you take care of yourself. And I think society, the church, has taught it wrong for so long
Mhm.
that we have misconstrued it. And when we say it, oh, I'm going to take a moment, that it sounds selfish. And it
Mhm.
isn't. And it isn't selfish. And people fail to realize, I'll even go as far to say is that Jesus took moments of awareness.
He
When
did.
he
He
went
was
up,
taking a
when he
nap
went,
when the boat was shaking.
not even that, but right, but yo, when he went up on the to the mountain in Gethsemane to go ahead and go pray, and he had three disciples with him, and he was like, "Yo, I'ma go steal away for this moment, and I need y'all to sit up and watch guard, and I'm gonna go pray." He needed to go away. He needed to get his mind right. What was about to go down? If he didn't get his mind right, how he would have never been able to fulfill what he did for us, right? He would have never been able to even process the thought because this was a man walking around in flesh with power.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like he
Mm-hmm.
at that moment he was man, so he was like, "Yo, I can't do this." Like he was shook. Real
Mm-hmm.
talk.
Yeah.
So and people fail to realize that when he was on earth, he was operating in flesh. He felt away.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to forget that we flesh too. Like we did. And yes, you're going to get tired. Yeah, you gonna get an attitude. Yeah, you going, but you have to reflect in those moments.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we have those examples to live by. I'm glad that those opportunities present themselves for us to be able to have a standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Takia, I do thank you for this time. And I want to ask you really quickly before we go, are there any final thoughts that you have? And then tell us where the people can find you.
Um, Final thoughts. If I could summarize, get comfortable, get familiar with failure. um, let's turn it in from an enemy to a resource. Um, and take care of yourself. I'm speaking to myself as well. But prioritize yourself so that you can take care of people better. And then I think people can find me in my car outside of coffee shops, clearly, and they can also find me at tkconsultingdesign.com, on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all at TK Consulting Design. And yeah, just holler at me. I don't know if I said exactly what I do, but you guys can go find me and find out. Maybe the mystery will help you get there. And yeah, you guys enjoy the rest of your day whenever you're seeing this.
All right. Well, Kia, I thank you so much for being a part of the SoulCare sessions today. This conversation was enlightening. I can't wait until it airs. So if y'all are seeing this, just make sure y'all are subscribing to the channel so you know where you can find us on YouTube at Lamb and Honey for the SoulCare sessions. And we're out.